Good evening and welcome to session 2 of Take a Breath. Thanks for joining me this evening for these short presentations that just make a singular point for us to reflect on. Tonight I've decided to call this particular session The Vigour of Veracity. The Vigour of Veracity. By veracity I mean the habitual observance of the truth in speech and in statement. You know, when I come to the end of the day, I like to have a clear conscience. A conscience that speaks to me and says, you've done your best today to be open and honest with everybody. That you've not used your words or any part of your speech to somehow detract from a person's character, their reputation, or their credibility. It's what helps me as a Christian get to sleep at night, having a clear conscience. I was reading in a book called The Foundations for Reconstruction. It's a book written by an author of a number of years ago called Alton Trueblood, and he writes about the 9th commandment, the one that says thou shalt not lie, or in some versions it says thou shalt not bear false witness. And so I want to read to you a little excerpt on his take of the 9th commandment. And it's pretty important because in this particular book he conjectures that if we would keep and understand the real importance of the law of God and how it reflects the character of God itself, we shall in some way or some measure be able to help influence the reconstruction of our society into a community that is far more beneficial for all than it currently is at present. And at this time I think it's quite poignant in terms of the various perspectives we're hearing about COVID. We often are being led to think one thing and then another thing. And depending on who the source is, we can have completely opposing views presented to us, which simply leads to confusion. And so we're to ask the question, well, where is the truth? Well, today I hope we can find the truth quite simply. So let me read to you a small passage from this book entitled Foundations for Reconstruction. The ancient law puts truth-telling into the most important as well as the most difficult context into which it can be put. It is lies about people that are the most dangerous lies in the world, and it is these lies which otherwise good persons are most tempted to tell. He goes on, the 9th commandment is almost universally broken and is probably more often broken than even the 10th. Thousands of highly respected persons who would never dream of committing murder or adultery or robbery engage in tale-bearing and detraction every day of their lives. It is so easy and so pleasant, he writes, to sit with one's friends and discuss a third party, especially if the conversation is mildly derogatory. It is such a pleasant form of sin, if there could be such a thing, since it is not one for which anyone can be sent to jail, and yet it gives a bit of excitement along with the sense of relative virtue in oneself. Just to talk of the shortcomings of another makes the conversationalist feel virtuous by contrast. Talebearing and gossip. Yeah, a very easy sin to fall into, Alton Trueblood writes. I hope that none of us are guilty of that. I hope that we take the words of Jesus very seriously. I'm just going to read a passage about the importance of truth and how it might set us free. It's found in John chapter 8 and beginning at verse 31. I'm reading from the NIV. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching," which as Christians we recognize as part of his teaching is the royal or the ancient law. "You are really my disciples, you're really my followers. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Those listeners answered him and said, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves to anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Jesus replied, "Very truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." I love to reflect on the fact that the teachings of Jesus remind us of being honest people, holding steadfast to integrity, not to fall into the trap of gossip. But to know the truth is to know Jesus. To know Jesus is to be set free, to no longer be a slave to sin. When I go to my rest tonight, I will go knowing that during the past 24 hours, by the grace of God, I have been set free. And with a clear conscience, I can rest well. God bless you all. Let's stay connected. Take a deep breath and rest easy.